That Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more. He also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing the tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. Tax experts tell The Times that the president is unlikely to face criminal prosecution for tax evasion because the statute of limitations has passed on any possible wrongdoing. But as The Times reports, there is no time limit on civil fines for tax fraud. The New York State Tax Department says it is reviewing the allegations.
The report continues. Fred Trump was relentless and creative in finding ways to channel his wealth to his children. He made Donald not just his salaried employee, but also his property manager, landlord, banker, and consultant. He gave him loan after loan, many of them never repaid. He provided money for Donald's car, money for his employees, money to buy stocks, money for his First Manhattan offices, and money to renovate those offices. He gave him 3 trust funds.
Jeez.
He gave him shares in multiple partnerships. He gave him $10,000 Christmas checks, and he gave him laundry revenue from his buildings. According to the investigation, Trump was earning $200,000 in today's dollars by age 3 and was a millionaire by the age of 8. By the time Donald was 17, his father had given him part ownership of a 52-unit apartment building. Once he graduated from college, The Times found Trump was receiving the equivalent of $1 million a year from his dad. That money reportedly increased over time to more than $5 million a year in his 40s and his 50s. According to The Times, the findings are based on interviews with Fred Trump's former employees, tens of thousands of pages of confidential records, bank statements, financial audits, accounting ledgers, cash disbursement reports, invoices, and canceled checks, as well as public records like mortgages, deeds, and civil court files. NBC News has not independently seen those documents or confirmed the totality of The Times reporting. Nick Confessori, for the record, Donald Trump's camp says the story is false and highly defamatory, but does say these tax matters were handled by other members of the Trump family and tax lawyers, not by Donald himself.
So no, in fact, Trump was deeply involved in the tax planning, the estate planning with his father. He was part of all of these schemes. And the reason is that they benefited him chiefly. What you're seeing here is what we see a lot in America in this country, which is the determination of very wealthy people to pass their fortunes on to their kids untaxed. And this family was extraordinarily creative in how they did it. And I think the part that stuck out to me most in this amazing report by colleagues of mine was that this is a man, Donald Trump, who has been on the record lying about the size of his fortune. But the way he accumulated his fortune was lying in the other direction about the value of real estate assets. What they did time and time again was systematically and grossly undervalue the buildings owned by the Trump family and say that they weren't worth anything, and then pass them to other people in the family, pass them from Trump Sr. to a Donald Trump. It's amazing.
You know, there's one other aspect that really stuck out. I mean, there was so much in here. It's just an incredible piece of journalism. And Joe, as an aside, I mean, we know that Mr. Trump loves to apply nicknames to people. He always has throughout his campaign and everything. We now have a nickname for the president, I would suggest, and it would be Thanks Dad. It's Thanks Dad Trump. But Joe, this is interesting. I found it interesting. Way down in this piece, and it deserves to be read by everyone. It gets to who Donald Trump really is. It builds up the case and points out how many times Trump's father, Fred, afforded him the opportunity, gave him all sorts of money to bail him out of certain difficult financial situations that Donald Trump had buried himself in. And here's the paragraph. But over time, as Donald Trump careened from one financial disaster to the next, his father found ways to give him substantially more money, records show. Even so, in 1990, according to previously secret depositions, Mr. Trump tried to have his father's will rewritten in a way that Fred Trump, alarmed and angered, feared could result in his empires being used to bail out his son's failing businesses. So in addition to being a tax cheat, a fraud, and a crook, we find out from the New York Times and all of this material that they provided but Donald Trump was also a scheming son. Who was, according to the report, scheming to change his father's will, to bail himself out in a way that scared his father. I mean, it's more than a few people have gone to jail for that. Eddie Glaude, this doesn't really surprise, I'm sure, doesn't surprise you, doesn't surprise many people, that the entire myth that Donald Trump has tried to create around himself, this billionaire deal maker who started very little, said, it was hard. Every step of the way, his life has been hard. It's just his entire life story is built on a lie. This kid was treated like the Queen's version of Richie Rich. He's got, millions of dollars by the time he's 8 years old because Daddy gave him the money. Daddy kept pouring more money into his bank accounts when he got in trouble, when he proved that he actually wasn't a good businessman, and then finally goes to Atlantic City and completely blows all of his father's money, the hundreds of millions of dollars that his father transferred to him, goes bankrupt, $9 billion, he by his own claims, bankrupt $9 billion, and chances are very good that he's exaggerating what he's worth now, and he's probably worth less than he was when his father gave him all that money.
Yes, Joe, 3 quick points. One, we know that he wasn't just simply born with a gold spoon in his mouth, but a platinum spoon in his mouth. And he blew his inheritance in interesting sorts of ways. 2, I'm reminded of Herman Melville's 1857 novel, The Confidence Man. And that's what Donald Trump is he invoked the phrase a while back, everything about him, his own biography, the way in which he presents himself, he is a confidence man selling a particular kind of snake oil to the country and to anyone who might believe him. And what's interesting in the New York Times piece, the Times even admits that it was complicit in building this image of him, that he sold this to them and to other people in the press. And then lastly, what is, I think, important here, Joe, is that we see this history, this pattern, it's almost inherited, tax fraud, right? Tax evasion, a kind of crookedness, as Mike laid out. We see it passed on to him, which means it's even more important that we should see his tax forms, right? Because more than likely, what he learned from his dad, we will find he did himself and continues to do.
Yeah, some would call this, it matches the profile of a man who has grown up with no responsibility, just awash in cash, no sense of right and wrong, and brings his sham to the presidency where ultimately, possibly, the emperor will have no clothes. An attorney for the president released the following statement, the New York Times, well, because... You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're just laughing at Joe's reaction to your
No.
Is that bad?
Willie and I are gonna have to talk about that this weekend at the Holiday Inn while we're smoking.
We're gonna need a few extra
cigarettes.
cards for this.
Gonna need a couple of extra cards, and this weekend again a great coincidence. But we're talking about Melville and not the Melville book you think, but The Confidence Man.
All right. The New York Times allegations of fraud and tax evasion are 100% false, the White House says, and highly defamatory. It was his attorney. There was no fraud or tax evasion by anyone. The facts upon which the Times bases its false allegations are extremely inaccurate. All of state matters were handled by licensed attorneys, licensed CPAs, and licensed real estate appraisers who followed all laws strictly.
Wait, hold on. Isn't that like Mika? It was a license this, license
Yeah.
that.
Like
Doesn't
a
mean they
doctor?
weren't cheating for him. Wasn't it? Who was it? Which White House person had said that something was true because they sent it certified mail the first thing?
Remember his doctor? The guy, the crazy
Certified doctor said he was the healthiest guy ever.
Exactly. It's all so certified. The statement continues. President Trump had virtually no involvement whatsoever with these matters. The affairs were handled by other Trump family members who were not experts themselves and therefore relied entirely upon the aforementioned licensed professionals. Should the Times state or imply that President Trump participated in fraud, tax evasion, or any other crime, it will be exposing itself to, he's going to sue them to substantial liability and damages for defamation. Where have we heard that before? Go ahead, Mike.
Daniel Goldman, let me ask you, Donald Trump's sister, Mary Ann, is a sitting federal judge. What if her name is on any of these tax returns that have been filed over the years that constitute fraud?
Well, we run into a situation where the only way that a judge can be removed is technically through impeachment. But if there is misconduct by Marianne Trump, and we don't know at all whether there is at this point, then it would be referred to a judicial committee to look into it in order to assess it. I mean, what we're seeing in this piece, I think that's interesting, is you guys have really pinpointed some of the hypocrisy of Donald Trump being a self-made man on the campaign trail, whereas in reality his father was his lifeline for all of his poor business dealings. But from a legal perspective, you see overinflated invoices, like you would have a contractor give an invoice to a subcontractor and then overinflate the work so that they could get a kickback. That's essentially what some of the allegations are. There are bogus loans that is a hallmark of fraud, where you say, I'll give you a loan, and then it just is never paid back. It's not actually a loan. There's a story about his father dumping $3.3 million of casino chips at his one of his casinos to give him enough operating cash to meet all of his needs. And then the other thing that's really interesting, and you pointed out earlier, is there are different representations of the value of his properties in official filings. So they undervalue it when it's convenient, and then they overvalue the same property when it's convenient as well. And that's another hallmark of fraud. None of this can be charged criminally because it's statute of limitations, but certainly the IRS could go back and look at it from a civil perspective.
So, Yamiche, you've been doing a lot of reporting on Trump supporters, and in fact, Trump voters' steadfast support for Donald J. Trump, regardless of what they may see in the news. This is the sort of story that might impact past presidents, but will it even raise an eyebrow in Trump country?
Well, I think what we really see is that this is about the myth of the American dream. And there are people that will look at this and say, well, wouldn't anybody want their dad to give them millions of dollars? Isn't this what you want for your children? For you to be able to fund them and to have their dreams come true. And when they mess up, to help them out and be the safety net for your child. So I think in some ways I read that story and thought, oh, well, this would in some ways want to be what we think the American dream is. Of course, the problem is that President Trump built this entire brand on this idea that he pulled himself up by his bootstraps, and so many of his supporters I talk to say that's what's so appealing about him, the fact that I could be Donald Trump, that anybody could be Donald Trump, when in fact anybody can't be Donald Trump because you would need a parent to be funneling money to you back to back. I think the other thing that's important is that this is someone who's now in charge of policy. His administration has said through Ben Carson that poverty is a state of mind, and they are making policies, rewriting the tax code, doing all these things that in this way, thinking that people are somehow not working hard enough, and that's why you didn't become Donald Trump, when in reality it's because your dad didn't give you millions of dollars when you were 8 years old, and some people, when they go to Yale, their grandfather didn't go to Yale like Brett Kavanaugh, and as a result, not everyone might get into Yale because there's obviously thoughts given to legacy students. So what you have is a lot of people in this country thinking, I want to be like Donald Trump, and that's why I want to follow him, but in reality you have to do a lot of stuff to do that.
Well, and Yamiche, another problem that I think politically it may not raise its head politically in the midterms, but if Donald Trump seeks re-election, his story of being this great deal maker that, as he said in 2016, started with next to nothing, and it was every step of the way was hard for him, that's undercut, and it is attached to the policies that you're talking about when you have a tax bill that Donald Trump signed, and that night he was at Mar-a-Lago with his billionaire friends saying, I just made you a lot of money today with these tax cuts that are overwhelmingly unpopular. Doesn't this all fit together politically? Donald Trump getting his money from his daddy, using illegal tax schemes, the rich getting richer, protecting themselves while the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class are struggling.
I mean, I think reading this story, Democrats are starting to find their talking points for 2020 because there's this idea now that you can say, when you think about the rich and the poor, Donald Trump was up there and he's been up there for a long time, and he's not looking out for you because he doesn't even understand what it would be to not have money because his father kept